Scary Terry, the 31-year-old guard for the Miami Heat, has pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors in the Eastern District of New York have charged him with wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering conspiracy, accusing him of helping a group of gamblers profit off insider information tied to a regular season game in 2023. He's currently free on bond, but the case now creates uncertainty over his standing in the league and his future. And the chain of events that led here begins with the regular season game. On March 23, 2023, the Charlotte Hornets rolled into New Orleans to face the Brandon Ingram-led Pelicans. Terry Rozier was in his normal starting role. At that point in the season, the high-volume guard was averaging 21 points on 19 shots, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists in roughly 35 minutes a game. He wasn't listed on the injury report, and no training staff members suspected any health concerns going into the game. Behind the scenes, the betting markets told a different story. At a sports book in Biloxi, Mississippi, one bettor dropped around $13,000 across 30 separate wagers, almost all targeting Rozier's unders on his player props. According to ESPN, the largest bet was a $2,700 wager placed on the under for 5.5 rebounds for Rozier, and that was made over the counter using a casino player's card. The other 29 bets were placed on a self-serve betting kiosk a few $100s at a time, beginning at 9:37 a.m. before the sportsbook counter was open, according to the records. By the time the game tipped off, multiple sportsbooks in different states had noticed that action on Rozier's stat lines was weirdly one-sided. According to ESPN sources, multiple sportsbooks in New Orleans also received heavier than expected action on the unders on Rozier props, starting in the morning and lasting until mid-afternoon. At 2:24 the day of the game, U.S. Integrity sent out a nationwide alert about suspicious wagering Terry Rozier NBA player props, according to documents ESPN obtained through another open records request. Rozier briefly played about 9 to 10 minutes before leaving with a sore right foot. His final stat line, 5 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists, which fell under the betting lines he was facing that night. According to Yahoo Sports, every one of those bets hit, and at least 6 sportsbooks in multiple states flagged the activity as unusual, with most of the heavy action coming out of Louisiana and Mississippi. According to federal prosecutors, that game was planned. In their version, Terry Rozier told his longtime friend Denero Laster before tip-off that he was going to pull himself out the game early with a supposed foot injury and not return. That kind of insider information is exactly what the public doesn't have and what props are built on. The government says Laster didn't keep that info to himself. Instead, he allegedly turned it into a business opportunity, passing it along to gamblers who also focused on Rozier's unders. If he barely played, his final stat line would almost automatically come in below the betting lines. On the court, that's basically what happened. Rozier started, checked out early, and never came back. For the books holding a ton of liability on one side of his props, it was a bloodbath. For the people who supposedly had the tip, it was a clean cash out. In the government's eyes, that's not a hot read or a lucky guess. It's a conspiracy built on non-public information. Rozier denies that, but that's the core theory of the case. From there, prosecutors say that the plan moved through Denero Laster, portrayed as the middleman, the operational bridge between Rozier and the bettors who wanted an edge. Investigators are claiming that Laster allegedly took Rozier's intel and agreed to sell the information to Marv's Fairley and another unnamed co-conspirator, with everyone expected to share the winnings once the bets hit. Prosecutors describe it as a pipeline with defined roles, financial expectations, and a clear distribution of who supplied, who moved, and who profited. That structure is a part of what pushed federal investigators to widen their scope and examine whether Rozier's actions during that 2023 game fit into the same pattern. Fairley, in turn, allegedly passed the tip to a bettor named Shane Hennon. According to the court documents, Hennon used a network of straw bettors, people placing wagers in their own names or accounts to spread out the action on Rozier's unders so it wouldn't raise any red flags. Prosecutors allege that Shane placed roughly $61,000 in wagers on Rozier's unders at retail sportsbooks, while another co-conspirator is tied to about $107,000 worth of under bets through a retail book. 2 other alleged conspirators, Timothy McCormick and Long Phi Pham, reportedly placed about 41,000 under bets with an online platform, and several additional collaborators stacked on wagers totaling 20,000, 17,000, and 12,500. Even a relative of Blaster allegedly created a new betting account, placing a $4,000 parlay on Rozier's unders that day. The result was dozens of bets across multiple accounts, all banking on Rozier's unders. The indictment also claims people closer to Rozier and Laster joined in. One bettor, who usually liked to bet on Rozier's over, supposedly flipped to unders for just this game and profited $1,500. A relative of Laster allegedly opened a new betting account, placed a large parlay on Rozier's unders, and funded it with money from someone who had previously asked for non-public info about Rozier's health. Afterward, prosecutors say Fairley allegedly traveled to pick up the winnings. Laster went to collect his cut and then drove to Charlotte. There, in Rozier's homes, the two supposedly sat and counted tens of thousands in cash. That's the picture the government wants the jury to see. A straight line from a secret about playing time to stacks of money on the table. Some sportsbooks logged internal alerts specifically citing the volume and the timing of the wagers as unusual, even though they ultimately honored the tickets. One entity that watches this kind of thing closely, U.S. Integrity, took notice as well. Shortly after tip-off, they issued the nationwide alert. None of this was visible to the average fan watching the broadcast, but in the integrity monitoring systems used by books and regulators, they saw fit to review the matter. Shortly after the NBA was notified, the league opened its own internal review, interviewed Rozier, and later said it did not find any violation of NBA rules at the time. Meanwhile, federal investigators in Brooklyn were already working on a broader case around illegal betting schemes involving non-public NBA information. On January 30th, 2025, the Wall Street Journal publicly reported that Rozier was under federal investigation. Months later, on October 23rd, 2025, prosecutors unsealed the indictment that formally charged Rozier and several others, upgrading this from a suspicion to a full federal case. When Rozier finally stood in the Brooklyn courtroom, he entered a plea of not guilty to the two conspiracy charges. No big speech, no public meltdown, just a formal denial. The judge released him on a $3 million bond secured by his home in Florida and another property. The conditions are strict: no gambling, no firearms, no contact with alleged victims or co-defendants, and no international travel without approval. He's free, but on a short legal leash. Around the same time, a separate storyline surfaced. Reports that the IRS had filed an $8.2 million tax lien against Rozier related to his 2021 income. That number made it look like he was in a financial struggle right as the betting allegations surfaced. A later filing, though, showed that the lien was released, and his attorney said it all came from a filing error. According to his camp, the actual bill was closer to $3,000, which had already been paid, allegedly. It doesn't erase the federal case, but it does undercut the picture of a player drowning in debt. Even without a verdict, the consequences were already in effect. After the indictment, the NBA moved to place Rozier on leave, and the Miami Heat followed, effectively removing him from the lineup and team activities. He's still on a roster, but he's not playing, practicing, or traveling with the team while the case plays out. Financially, Scary Terry took a massive hit. Rozier's $26.6 million salary is effectively frozen while he's on leave. The Heat don't get a clean reset on their cap sheet, and Rozier doesn't see the checks he'd normally be getting. It's a stalemate where both the team and the player are stuck. The NBA Players Association has pushed back. They filed a grievance challenging the idea that a player can be kept on unpaid leave before a conviction, arguing that it undermines the basic innocent until proven guilty principle and may overstep the league's rights under the collective bargaining agreement. Inside the locker room, the tone is more personal. Heat star Bam Adebayo has publicly said the Heat are offering Rozier their full support, calling him our brother and talking about how strange it felt when he suddenly disappeared from the team. Coach Eric Spoelstra has praised Rozier's presence and has kept the focus on supporting him as a person. Even while declining to touch the legal side, whatever happens in court, it's clear the situation has already reshaped his role in Miami. On paper, the charges Rozier faced are heavy. Wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering conspiracy each carry a maximum of up to 20 years in prison. That doesn't mean he's realistically staring at 40 years. Sentencing in federal court depends on guidelines, dollar amounts, prior record, and whether someone accepts responsibility. But it shows how seriously prosecutors are treating this. From here, he basically has three lanes. One is a plea deal. He can strike a deal with the government, plead guilty to one or more charges in exchange for dropped counts or a lighter recommended sentence. That could still mean prison, probation, and financial penalties. A plea would almost certainly taint his public image and make returning to the NBA difficult, but it would give him some control over the risk. The second option would be to go to trial. He can maintain his not guilty plea and take the case to a jury. Then the government has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he joined a conspiracy to use inside information to game the betting markets. If he wins, he's legally cleared. If he loses, he faces whatever sentence the judge decides is appropriate after a failed trial. The last option is he can win on legal grounds. His lawyer can try to knock out part or all of the case before trial, with motions arguing that the indictment overreaches or misapplies the law. That's always an uphill climb in a federal criminal case, but it's part of the playbook. Overlay all that with his NBA future. If he's convicted or takes a plea, the league now has the Jontay Porter precedent, a lifetime ban for manipulating props and sharing inside information. Even without prison, Rozier could find himself blacklisted from the NBA. If he's acquitted or the case gets tossed, a different question kicks in. Will teams, sponsors, and fans treat him like he's cleared, or does the stigma never really go away? Rozier's case is less about one guy's integrity and more about the tension the NBA has created when it embraced legalized gambling. The league has official sportsbooks partners, odds integrated in the broadcast, and marketing built around player props and same-game parlays. Fans aren't just rooting for teams anymore. They're tracking individual stats for monetary gain. At the same time, the NBA sells itself as a fair competition league. When there are credible allegations that a player manipulated his own performance to help certain bets hit, the fans begin to lose trust in the product. If fans and bettors start wondering whether injuries, minutes, or rotations are quietly tweaked for gambling reasons, the product starts to feel rigged. We're already seeing players complain about DMs from angry bettors, and in cases like this, where prosecutors say inside information was effectively sold, it forces a bigger conversation. How far can a league go in partnering with sportsbooks before it starts undercutting the basic belief that what you're watching is real, unscripted competition? Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.